So I'm Mark Steed. I'm the founder and director of Steed Education, a consultancy that was set up to support schools. We look particularly at cost control. So there are lots of consultancies out there, and I think what makes us different is that we've actually done the jobs. We've been teachers, we've been house parents, we've been bursars, we've been head teachers, we've sat in the chair, we've done it. We know how the timetable works. We know that you can't have 100% efficiency on staffing because of the constraints of timetabling options and so on. I think we understand how schools work in a way that most other consultancies don't. Schools reach out to us in three instances. The first one is they can see there's going to be a problem down the line. They are in a healthy financial position, but they realise that that isn't sustainable. Year-on-year fee increases are not going to work. So that group, it's about preparing them for the future. There are others who are just going into a situation where they're projecting perhaps a balanced budget or a deficit budget for the first time. They are in a situation where they realise they've got to cut costs quite quickly. And then sadly, there's the sort of third situation, which is when they're in an acute problem where they are going to go bust. They need to totally restructure. And we go in those situations and help those. So one of the things we pride ourselves in at Steed Education is that we will tailor our approach to the context. So whether that's in a financially strong position but just being prudent for the future, or whether it's a situation where it is really acute and the school needs to turn things around very rapidly. The first component is around getting a set of financial metrics and then telling the story in a way that the wider group can understand. And what we find is that's really important to lay the ground for any cost reduction project within a school. Because if the education committee on a governing body, for example, don't understand the financial urgency of having to perhaps cut a few subjects or reduce the teaching headcount, and that they push back from an educational point of view, then that's going to be a real problem going forward. The second dive is looking at what the total cost of a teacher is, because it's very easy to just look at pay scales, and a lot of people use benchmarking pay scales and so on. But what we find is that by going significantly deeper, we find new stories, very different stories around what's going on. And then the third component is really digging into how the school is using its staffing. So the way in which the timetable is constructed, the number of subjects, the number of option subjects available. We would do an audit of the average class size in every subject in every year group. We would work through the teacher staffing ratios for each department. We look at where the small classes are, which subjects aren't viable. So we do a really deep dive in order to allow the school to make the decisions in an informed way about how it's going to cut costs. I think the key question we are asked is, how can we help the school plan for the future? So with that in mind, we've developed a financial scenario modelling tool, and that allows us to play with a number of variables and ask what-if questions. It looks at issues like, what if we were to reduce discounting? What would be the impact on the profit and loss account and on cash? What if we were to improve the teacher-pupil ratio? What impact would that have on P&L and on cash flow? The financial scenario modelling tool is a tool that really allows schools to look to the future and to try and find its financial security. So one example is we worked with a North London day school. They'd come to a realisation that their budget wasn't going to balance, and they needed to take quite a significant amount out of their staffing budget. And so we worked really closely with the team, doing an audit of staffing, doing an audit of how they were delivering their subjects, which subjects weren't viable. And we were able to take something in the region of 1.5 million out of their staffing budget. We were then invited back to help them using the financial scenario planning tool in order to find a model that would suit the school going forward with slightly fewer numbers than they had before. So that was a really good example of running the metrics and then finding a solution and a model for them to restabilize the school. So if people want to find out more about working with us, we can be contacted through our website, steededucation.com, or through LinkedIn. And we would set up an initial call to talk through what the project is and how we might support them. It's often helpful if schools have an idea of what they're looking to achieve, whether that's a cost reduction project, and what sort of timescales they're working on becomes quite important too.